Let the bass kick. Let the bass kick.
Think about it. Think about it. Think about it.
All right, good morning, and welcome to this 4 October Board of County Commissioners meeting at 9 a.m. And our first order of business is to call this meeting to order. We do have 4 commissioners present, and I understand that Commissioner Williams will be joining us partway through this meeting. So when we come to the first vote, we need to make sure that we excuse her. And at that point, once she'll be excused initially, and then she'll join the meeting at a particular time, and then we'll have 5 commissioners present here on the dais. Or actually, I think she might be online the whole day. That's the text I saw. No, is she coming in? She's coming in? Anyway, we'll find out. All right. So our first order of business is our invocation, and that will be given this morning by Carolyn Rogers from Radiant Church. Thank you very much for doing the invocation. If everybody could please stand and pray in your own way.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Lord, thank you for this gorgeous day and this beautiful city we live in. Thank you for the freedom to assemble in this place. Lord God, you have chosen each of these county commissioners to be the voice for the people of El Paso County, to be here today to make important decisions for the future of our piece of this state we call El Paso County. Be with them as they approach these decisions. Guide these chosen men and women in the direction that is your will for our county. In God we trust. And now I'd like to ask everyone to join me to recite the Lord's Prayer. Jesus told us in Matthew 6:9 to pray in this manner. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Thank you for that prayer. If we could have our district attorney lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands.
Thank you. All right, let's continue with the agenda. Item number 3.
Item number 3 is staff emergency items. I'm unaware of any staff emergency items.
Very good. Item number 4.
Item number 4 is changes, postponements, and notice of the next meeting. Mr. Chair, one request to consider item number 5E2 under the called up consent calendar, which is item number 9, and the notice of next meeting at 1 o'clock for the land use agenda.
Thank you very much. Let us now go to item number 5.
Item number 5 is the consent calendar consisting of item numbers 5A through 5E1 and excluding 5E2, which will be considered under item number 9.
All right, very good. Before we proceed with item number 5, I'll entertain a motion to excuse Commissioner Williams.
I move to excuse Commissioner Williams.
Second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Let's go ahead and proceed with a vote. Commissioner Geithner?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Bremer?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes 4-0. Commissioner Williams is now excused at this point in the meeting. All right. And do we have anybody in the audience that would like to comment on any item on the consent calendar? Well, actually, my apologies. I think we still have to finish the reading. Or do we have more to the reading, or are we good?
Mr. Chair, I believe we're good.
Okay.
The consent calendar is just consisting of items 5A through 5E1.
Thank you very much. All right, I'll open up this for discussion for anybody in the audience or anybody online that may have comments for any of the items on the consent calendar. Is there anybody online at this point? Okay, thank you. All right, seeing none, I'll bring this up to the dais. Is there anybody, any of the commissioners interested in comments or questions regarding the consent calendar? Yes, it was public comment. Which one do you have comment on? Yes, we've changed that to item 9, the called up consent calendar. So it's all items other than that item at this point. Okay, thank you. All right, we're on the dais here. Any comments from any of the commissioners? All right, I'll entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
Move to approve items 5A through 5E1.
Second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Let's go ahead and proceed with a vote. Commissioner Geithner?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Aye.
Commissioner Bremer?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes 4-0 with Commissioner Williams excused. Let's move to item number 6.
Item number 6 is comments by elected officials and commissioner liaison reports.
Okay, very good. Before I bring this to the dais, we have 2 elected officials in the audience. District Attorney Michael Allen is coming forward, and he has a few comments he'd like to make, and then we'll have Mr. Browerman.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's always good to see you, at least 4 of you.
Just want to talk briefly about an issue that Commissioner Chair Stan Vanderwerf brought up to me prior to the calling this meeting to order, and that is rising crime rates, and specifically as it relates to fentanyl. Fentanyl is an ongoing epidemic. It's broader than just fentanyl, though. I keep saying that it's a synthetic opioid epidemic because the chemical compounds and structure of synthetic opioids will change. We're already seeing that change on the coast. That will hit our area probably in the next year or so. We are now also seeing that rainbow fentanyl is in the state. We've seen that on the western slope, and we should assume that it's here in our area as well. What rainbow fentanyl is mimicking candy. It looks like candy. It looks like Skittles. It could look like gummy bears, that kind of thing, and it's laced with fentanyl. Again, there's no way to know the dosage amount of any one of these pills or candy lookalikes, and so we should always assume that each one of those is a deadly dosage in those mixtures. As it relates to crime rates, we're seeing crime rates continue to rise across the country, but also here in Colorado and here on the Front Range. And what we're also seeing, and I'm going to give you a sneak peek into our budget presentation that we are going to do on October 20th. We're going to do some stats presentation to you. But one thing that's really concerning is that because of, in my mind, the attack on police that's happened over the last several years by our legislature, solve rates have also declined. And so that's exacerbating this problem. It's by no fault of the police. They just have less resources than they had before. They're stretched thinner than they ever have. And that's leading to more crimes going unsolved, which exacerbates that rising crime rate because people are more emboldened. They're not being caught and dealt with in an appropriate manner. And that's causing big problems for our communities as well. Don't want to give away too much of our budget presentation, so I'm not going to talk about all the dirty details on that. But if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them for you.
Thank you, Mr. District Attorney. Are there any comments or questions from the commissioners? I do have some comments, but I'll reserve those in case others do. Yes, Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question. I heard a very interesting statistic just last week regarding, particularly around car thefts, which we know are have just skyrocketed in Colorado, which is really unfortunate. But one of the statistics that I saw was that 80% of those who are being apprehended for those are actually on parole. Do you have any thoughts about what is happening in terms of the parole board and what kind of problems that is creating for our community in general?
So first and foremost, I think it's important to understand that a couple of years ago, the value for stolen vehicles was raised up to $2,000, meaning that a vehicle that's stolen that's less than $2,000 is actually a misdemeanor. And so that's going to be a summons issue as opposed to an arrest issue. We're seeing a lot more of that. And frankly, that is a disproportionate impact on poor people, people that are in disadvantaged situations socioeconomically. They don't have the resources to go out and get a new vehicle like somebody else that maybe has more resources or better insurance coverage, that kind of thing, that can get a rental car for that family. It is no surprise to anybody that we've pushed out a lot of people as a relation to COVID. DOC, as a matter of fact, for year 2020, noted what a percentage of people that were pushed out of custody at the Department of Corrections. In their own words, the vast majority of those people were pushed out because of COVID concerns, not because they'd achieved parole status. And it's going to be people that are fitting in that exact profile that you're talking about, Commissioner Geithner. People that have prior convictions that are now pushed back out into the community, and then they're going to recommit offenses because they haven't gone through the reentry programs and that sort of thing that they otherwise would have. We are seeing more of that here in our area as well. We lead the nation in stolen vehicles. It's no surprise also to the commissioners that people that are stealing cars are not just stealing cars, they're also engaging in violent behavior. Several of our officer-involved shootings from last year involved people that had firearms and got into officer-involved shootings with the officers that were trying to stop the person fleeing from stealing a car. So these are oftentimes very violent people that are willing to commit violence on the community and to armed law enforcement that are responding to an emergency. One thing that I think is important to note is we've modified the way that we're handling ag motor vehicle theft in this DA's office. And that is prior to, that was a diversion eligible offense. I've taken that offense off of our diversion eligible offense status because it's just become something that is out of control. And so we're taking a stronger stance on that in our DA's office and with our law enforcement partners. So your question though was, are we seeing that more people committing ag motor vehicle theft with prior convictions? And that's absolutely true.
Thank you for those comments. Any other questions? Yeah. Oh, yes, Commissioner Geithner, please, with your follow-up.
Sorry, just a follow-up question here. Really appreciate that information and appreciate the stance that your office is taking to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep this community safe. You know, there's a lot of theories, I guess, around why we're seeing this huge spike in vehicle thefts. And I've heard everything from, the economy is so bad, people are, stealing more things because they can't afford to live, and all of those different things. There's also, to me, maybe this huge spike in opioid use and all of these things. Is it drug related? Do you have any sense of what is causing people to really go on this? And part of it may just be that we just have more people who've been released and therefore they're just out on the streets again committing crime, but would love your take.
Yeah, so I think that's a hard nut to crack as far as what's really behind it, because I think there's a lot of factors. I mentioned DOC pushing people out of custody sooner than they had been previously. I think that the COVID response that our country and the state took also is an exacerbating issue. The fact that people are now being dealt with at a misdemeanor level as opposed to a felony level, as I mentioned, also is another factor. But there's a business there too, and these people are they're committing crimes, but it's a business to them. There was a pretty widely covered story out of the Denver metro area about this person that was stealing vehicles from the airport at Denver DIA and was eventually caught because of a car owner was very proactive in trying to track down who stole their car, and eventually sees the person in their vehicle and calls the police, and then that person's finally apprehended. And that one I think may also have involved an officer-involved shooting or use of force to apprehend that suspect. So I think there's a lot of factors involved in this, including the fact that we've decriminalized a lot of offenses. Drugs have been decriminalized to a very exorbitant way, I guess. Back all the way from 2013, when a wobbler was created, meaning that if somebody was convicted of a felony and they successfully completed probation, it would wobble down to a misdemeanor. That was the first step in the decriminalization effort. And just so people know, decriminalization has two different ways of being defined. One is to take away all criminal penalty associated with the behavior. Another is to reduce the criminal penalty associated with any sort of behavior. And so when you lower an offense from a felony to a misdemeanor, that is in effect decriminalization. Then in 2019, possession of 4 grams or less of lots of drugs, including dangerous drugs like methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl, was reduced to a misdemeanor. That's a decriminalization effort that the Fentanyl Accountability and Prevention Act of this last legislative session tried to correct and fell short of. So I think there's a lot of factors involved in the answer to your question. It's going to take a lot more than just law enforcement to change the course on that. It's going to take the legislature and a governor's office to right some of these missteps. And it's going to take the community also to fully engage on some of these issues, because some of these things need to be prevented before they get to the criminal justice system, right? Meaning that resources are in place for people dealing with mental health issues, addiction issues. We don't, as a matter of course, put people in prison for possessing drugs. Typically, those people are put on probation, and then that sort of person has to really earn their way into a prison sentence by committing offense after offense after offense, and also not complying with probation, which is, there's that myth out there that people that are in possession of drugs are sent to prison at a disproportionate rate. That's never been the practice in the state level. It was in the federal level, but the vast majority of these offenses are prosecuted at the state level. So we need to dispel that myth as well and get those folks, the addiction folks, the help that they need so that they can be removed from the criminal justice system in a healthy way, overcome their mental health and addiction issues. And it's going to take a real concerted effort on the part of the community to do that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Mr. Allen, thank you for speaking this morning. part of why all this was prevalent on my mind is because on Friday I participated in a ride-along with a couple of deputy sheriffs, and it was just a fantastic experience to be part of that. I actually did it for 10 straight hours, and it cut over a shift change. So in the first part of the shift, or in the first part, I participated with one deputy sheriff. In the second part, I participated with a different one. And during those 10 hours, we recovered a stolen vehicle and got it into the impound lot. We responded to a 911 call. We investigated a robbery of construction materials on a construction site. And we arrested 2 individuals that were found that were both on warrant. One was for a failure to appear, and the other one was for egregious numbers of traffic violations. And in both of those cases, I participated in the process of the arrest and getting that person processed into the jail. But what struck me, among many things, is the professionalism of these deputy sheriffs, their intense knowledge of the law and what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. One of the individuals that was arrested, and names will not be mentioned and all that, was actually very complimentary of the deputy sheriffs, because he had been incarcerated in other places around the country and didn't feel he was treated nearly as well as he was treated here. I just thought these people were amazing, that they go out every single day, not knowing if they're coming back, interact with the community, keep all of us safe, and in a 10-hour period, all of this work with just 2 deputies, but basically it was a single 10 man-hours. It was amazing. They were busy, they were professional, they did their job, and the other amazing thing was they loved their job. They loved their work. They love helping the community be safe. I'm just grateful for the sheriff's office, for the work that everybody does over there, and I appreciated my participation in that ride-along and getting to know these 2 deputy sheriffs. And I just found it kind of poetic that this morning in the Colorado Springs Gazette was an article about crime still on the rise in the state. And Mr. District Attorney, you mentioned a few of these things, but some other specifics. Car theft in Denver is the 2nd highest in the nation. Car thefts are on track to exceed 48,000 car thefts this year in Colorado, which is an unbelievable number. The article cites a study that squarely blames this on the criminal justice reform legislation that was enacted by the legislature, which included decriminalization of a range of crimes, reductions in punishments, and a lot of work about decarceration instead of incarceration. It also spoke extensively about the fentanyl crisis, and I appreciate, Mr. Allen, your conversation about that. Something cited in this article is that law enforcement agencies in Colorado have seized more fentanyl seized more fentanyl in the first 5 months of 2022 than they did in all of 2021. This is, and also there are 3 Colorado citizens dying every day from fentanyl, 3 a day. This really is a crisis, and it really is amazing. And I know that we're fighting some huge battles on this. And I appreciate that everybody is deeply involved in this. And it also talked about House Bill 1326 that was conducted in the last legislative cycle, which was basically a correction to recriminalize fentanyl because it had been previously decriminalized, which is unbelievable when you think about it. But I think many of us, and I can certainly speak for myself, did not feel that House Bill 1326 went far enough. This is really something that we need to continue to work very hard on. The crime in Colorado, the reasons for why we have crime, and also fentanyl in particular, and other synthetic opioids. So thank you, Mr. Allen, for your testimony this morning. And I just felt compelled to talk a little bit about this because of the ride-along I did and the dedication I saw from our deputy sheriff. So thank you very much. All right.
All right, thank you, Commissioners.
Mr. Browerman, I think you wanted to come up and speak for a minute?
Chairman Vanderwerf, County Commissioners, I just wanted to briefly discuss a press release that we released from our office yesterday. As we have done in years past, after the election, we do additional items where we demonstrate our transparency to our citizens, from making our ballot images available, our cast vote records, how each machine read each and every ballot, from bringing in an outside auditor, Clear Ballot, that comes in and retabulates our elections. We also make available what we call our BAT tool, our ballot audit tool. It's a tool that allows citizens in the comfort of their own home. They can go to our website at epcvotes.com and click on the 2022 elections and the records and results tab. And then you can go into that and scroll down, and you can then get a password to where you would get access to every single ballot, the ballot image, how the machine read each one, and then any adjudication. So that allows you to be your own citizen auditor. It allows you to do your own hand count. I know there are people in our community that are interested in a hand count, and this gives them the capability to do so. So I just wanted to point out that tool this morning. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Browerman. Any comments? Yes, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you. Could you ask, or could you highlight what's the website for anybody that wants to get information about voting?
Oh, EPC Votes.
Okay.
EPC Votes, El Paso County Votes.com, or you can call our office at 719-575-8683. That's 575-VOTE. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Browerman. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right, let's continue. Let's bring this now up to the dais for comments from the commissioners, and we'll start with Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to everyone. Couple of things that are going on this week. One is that I will be out at Smith Farms this week and preparing for the upcoming fall festival that's out there. I mentioned that last week, but if you have not attended the giant pumpkin contest to see which pumpkin weighs in the highest, it's a really fun event for the whole community, especially for kids. Those pumpkins are up in the 1,000-pound range and larger sometimes, and it's a really neat experience. And of course, then they drop it and drop one of them, or maybe more than one, I'm not sure. I've only seen them do one, but and watch it explode all over, which is always a very good time for the kids too. So I'll be out there in kind of preparation and for that event this week. That is on October 15th is the actual fall festival. So this week I also will be participating in a rather lengthy CCI meeting, which will help determine some of the legislative priorities and things that counties as a whole will work on and kind of tackle together in the next legislative session. And I wanted to also mention, being originally from Florida, being born in Florida, that they are, of course, undergoing some pretty severe devastation as a result of the hurricane that hit Florida. And I would just ask for your prayers for those folks and along the East Coast that are dealing with the aftermath of all of that. And then last, I wanted to mention last week, we had another meeting of the Opioid Council. Commissioner Gonzalez was also a part of that, as well as DA Allen. And as a reminder, again, that is the council that will be charged with looking at how to spend those dollars that were received through the opioid settlement. Those are not tax dollars, but dollars that were part of a settlement with drug companies as a result of what I would say is negligence and making sure that people understood the seriousness, not overprescribing, not, all of those pieces around making sure that people had the information about how dangerous opioids can be and how addictive. And we know that a lot of people succumb to those addiction, and that's where we are today. So I'm really looking forward to that process and figuring out how we can best help our community and deal with the effects of that epidemic. I think that it's becoming even more serious as we talk about fentanyl and the things that are involved. So I'm really optimistic that we're going to be able to do some great good in that. One of the things that was mentioned in that meeting that I thought was really interesting and is related to the topic at hand today is we're talking about decriminalization of drug possession and all those things. It's very easy to think, as DA Allen mentioned, that somehow we're just locking up people and they're not getting help and those kind of things that kind of flow around as rumors out there. But in reality, one of the things that was mentioned in a survey of some folks in our community was that in order to get help, they needed to hit rock bottom. And that's not really a completely foreign concept. Most of us know that is often what happens when someone is dealing with addiction. They have to get to a point where they are forced to look, admit that they have a problem, and seek that help. And one of those things that was mentioned as being rock bottom might have been involvement with the justice system. Somehow being arrested, taken into custody, one of those things that caused them to realize, hey, I actually have a problem and I need to get help. And the decriminalization, while it sounds compassionate, might actually be a huge hindrance to people getting the help that they need if they are not having those run-ins. And there's a way to do it that allows for people to, of course, get to those recovery places. And as I said, DA Allen mentioned that there is help and there is diversion. There are those programs available, and that's what we need to be focusing on, is how we continue to help. Because in my mind, as I've spoken about here, I had a sibling who overdosed and died. I don't think it would have been compassionate for anyone to continue to enable people to be an addict and not get help. And so it's important that we not forget that there's compassion in drawing lines for people that help them get the help that they need. So really looking forward to the work we're going to do on that council, and grateful for the participation of so many in our county already. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate your comments. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too did participate in the opioid council meeting last week. Tonight I do have it was very valuable information. I'm participating in a evening reception tonight for 100 years of United Way. I think there might be several going to that tonight to highlight all the great things they've been doing for our community. And then a couple other small ones. And then this Friday, I will be participating in my monthly State Board of Veteran Affairs meeting. Unfortunately, that'll take me through about halfway through the first of the CCI meeting, membership meeting that was already mentioned, but I'll participate in the afternoon portion of that. And then I do want to take a second to brag that I will be in the First Friday Art Walk this Friday evening at Vector Bank, just across the street from, I believe, 5 to 7:30. So if anybody has not done a local downtown First Friday Art Walk, it'd be a great opportunity to come up to me and ask me a lot of questions about county.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that. Commissioner Bremer.
Thank you. In addition to the other events that have been mentioned, I also had overlap with many of those, but I will not have art featured in the walk on Friday. This week we have PPACG is hosting the second of an aging roundtable to discuss issues facing those living in assisted living and nursing homes. And there are some particular health and safety concerns. And this group of community leaders really wants to try to understand and figure out how we can make sure that that the policies and the support services are actually keeping the residents in those facilities safe and healthy. And of course, as with so many things in our world. The problems that already existed in many of those places are, it was just magnified during a pandemic. So that is taking place tomorrow at PPACG. Later this week, there's also a Workforce Development Board meeting, and several new members were just appointed to that. They will be joining officially for the first time. And then this weekend, I will be also trying to get out to Smith Farms with my family after participating in the NAMI Walk, National Association of Mental Illness, which I understand is being emceed by our very own coroner, Dr. Leon Kelly, who will be encouraging walkers on that. He, of course, is has been an active board member and I believe past president of that organization, and done tremendous work kind of on the front end of mental health issues in our community. And I think that's it for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. And for my comments, I thought it was, I participated in the ribbon cutting for the Research and Powers, which took place late last week, and it was great to make it formal that it was open, even though it had actually been open a couple of weeks. But that was a badly needed interchange, a great separation interchange, and the ceremony was nice. I appreciate Commissioner Geithner's pumpkin contest comments. You know, I've always enjoyed watching on television the Pumpkin Chunkin' competition. And for those of you that don't know, that was shooting pumpkins out of these big, gigantic cannons, because I guess some people have a whole lot of money. They got nothing better to do with all that money. I did look it up since Commissioner Geithner brought it up, and the best record that I could find is chucking a pumpkin 4,700 feet, almost a mile, which is unbelievable. But anyway, that I really did enjoy that. When I would watch that on TV. I appreciate also the comments asking for prayers for those that have lost their lives and all of the damage that has taken place in Florida. I was, when I was active duty in the Air Force, I was stationed in Tampa, Florida, and actually went through a couple of hurricanes, but nothing as severe as this. But we did go through some pretty intense weather. And most of the summers that I was there, from '97 to '01, we spent a weekend or two every summer on Sanibel Island. And Sanibel Island was one of these places that was most heavily hit. The damage there is almost complete. And my heart goes out to those people on Sanibel Island, a former big tourist attraction. I was heartened by the article about that from when people on Sanibel Island were interviewed, and they intend on rebuilding and making it better, and I look forward to that. But my prayers go out to all of them. Also, I appreciate the comments from the other commissioners about their participation in several events this upcoming week. My apologies, I will not be able to participate in those because I am going to be celebrating with my wife our 30th anniversary in Hawaii, but we're going to celebrate it on our 32nd anniversary because during the 30th and 31st, Hawaii was essentially shut down by COVID. So now it's open, and we'll be able to enjoy our 30th anniversary here coming up. And we're leaving in the morning, and we'll be gone 10 days. This will mean that next week I will not be at our board meeting, and Commissioner Bremer will be chairing that board for that meeting next week. I appreciate everybody's efforts in continuing to do great work on behalf of the county, and those are my comments. Let us now continue to item number 7.
Item number 7 is community service organization reports. There are none.
All right, very good. Item number 8.
Item number 8 is public comment on items not scheduled on the agenda. This is your opportunity to speak on an item not scheduled on the agenda. And Mr. Chair, I don't have anyone signed in to read names off the sign-in sheet at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody online that wishes to speak to any item that is not on the agenda? No? Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on any item that is not on the agenda? Yes, please come on up. And if you hadn't signed in already, please do so and then state your name.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Dalby, candidate for Colorado Springs mayor. As always, I'm here to speak about the resolution on voter ID that I've proposed. I'll continue to do so until we get that passed, but I just wanted to point out my concern is, of course, with the security of the ballots, the chain of custody that doesn't exist with the bulk mailing of the ballots. I know we'll be speaking about the Runbeck contract, and there will be an additional time to speak about that. But I just want to make sure that my comments on the calling it junk mail, which of course is what most people call bulk mailing, is not misconstrued as an attack upon our fine men and women who work for the Postal Service. The fact is that as a small businessman, I've used direct mailing as a cost-effective and it's a good method of advertising. For about 50 cents, you can get a broad reach. Most of the pieces get pretty close to where they're supposed to be. And that's appropriate if what we're doing is trying to spread a wide net and mail out to a non-specific audience. There is other levels of service that the post office provides. I myself try to have a diversified portfolio. I have a few gold bullion, a few dollars in gold bullion. That is also delivered by U.S. Postal Service. Their service called Registered Mail. It's the premier class of Postal Service delivery. It obviously is not as cheap as junk mail, but it is guaranteed delivery, and it is, the post office obviously will not just drop a roll of gold eagles into any random mailbox, as they shouldn't. But it is worth noting that at that premier level of service, when what you're mailing actually matters, when it is something of value, that that delivery requires in-person delivery with a valid ID and a signature. So again, I'm not trying to slam on the Postal Service when I say that I would prefer our ballots not to be mailed junk mail. I am simply saying that I would like to have them treated as if they were valuable. Our ballots are what determines the future of our country. I think they're of immense value. If the state, if the county chooses to use the Postal Service in delivering ballots to the individuals, then I would like to request that they use an appropriate level of service for something of value. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to provide public comments on any items not on the agenda? All right. Yes, please come on up. And again, sign in and then state your name.
Good morning. My name is Tanya Regan, and I live here in Colorado Springs. I don't know, probably a lot of you, like I, wake up every day to what I consider a new nightmare. It's like there were 51 immigrants illegal that were caught in a van last summer that died of heat, stroke, right? I mean, 250,000 children, unaccompanied minors that have come across the border. You all have mentioned fentanyl. I mean, it's an invasion of drugs across our border every day. We hear about the FBI. It took Mike Lindell's phone. It raided Sharona Bishop's house, a mom that was homeschooling, and drug her daughter upstairs by her hoodie. It's arrested hundreds of people, the J6 prisoners that live worse than those in the Hanoi Hilton. What kind of America is this, I ask you, that we're living in, that we're not making a difference, we're not standing up? Part of it begins with election integrity. Part of it begins with being secure in our elections. I was a part of the citizens audit that was done by U.S. Election Integrity Project. I knocked on doors all over El Paso County. I went to homes that got 12 ballots, and they had 4 people. 2 of the people's registrations were flipped from Republican to unaffiliated. A lot of people here don't know that when you register and you get your new driver's license, that your registration automatically becomes unaffiliated. We have issues with our elections, and I know you know that. In Wisconsin, they're getting rid of ballot boxes. I think we need to do the same. I think we need to have one day, one vote, a voter ID, no machines. Anybody with a basic in computer science knows that the machines can flip and change anything. I remember my computer and science instructor when I was at the Air Force Academy. His name was Lieutenant Commander Hartling. That man was, at least I thought, was brilliant because back then he could program a machine to do things that thought it was a different machine. Well, we now know that that's what's happened to our elections. Those machines go in, they reprogram things, and they come out. If you haven't watched Selection Code, if you haven't watched 2000 Mules, if you haven't actually read the reports on Tina Peters' websites, please do so. Just read the executive summary. It's all there. And all Tina Peters did to get thrown in jail was to back up the records before the quote-unquote trusted build. So I have no faith in those machines. I have faith in people. I have faith that people believe that they want a different world for our children and for our grandchildren. And I tell people, my grandbabies can't fight, but I can, and they're gonna come for me before they touch them. And I know you feel the same, and I ask for all of you as parents and grandparents to stand up and fight for the future of our children. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, please. Yes, thank you. Does anybody else wish to make comments on any items not on the agenda? All right, very good. Let's go ahead and proceed now to item number 9, and I think we have one item.
Item number 9 is the called up consent calendar consisting of item number 5E2, award of an amendment and purchase order to Runbeck Election Services Incorporated for printing of ballots and mail ballot envelopes, mail ballot insertion, and mailing services for the Clerk and Recorder's Office for the 2022 general election at a total not to exceed cost of $176,316, contract number 22-016, Tracy Gorman, Division Manager, Contracts and Procurement.
All right, Mr. Brownman, if you'd like to come up.
Chairman Vanderwerf, County Commissioners, as I had mentioned in discussion with each of you the past several months, and what you know about the standard procedure for my office during my time as clerk, that I would be coming back to the Board of County Commissioners for a supplemental purchase order for ballot printing, outgoing envelopes, voting instructions, and return envelopes in late summer to early fall for the November general election. This year, the ballot content is especially significant. 5 measures referred to the ballot by the General Assembly, 6 measures placed on the ballot by citizens-led initiatives. Couple that with 10 local participating jurisdictions and an extremely content-rich Pikes Peak Regional Transit Authority item. We have the largest ballot in the last at least 34 years. It has been an extreme challenge for our department to lay out and proof a ballot in this historic year. For these reasons, in addition to the increased number of active voters for the upcoming election, I'm coming back to you at the earliest possible time to make this request. This request is to increase the spending authority to allow the state of Colorado and the other 10 local jurisdictions adequate space on the ballot for their citizens to vote on important issues before their citizens. To reiterate, this has been a nominal process over the last 8 years, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about this item.
All right, great. Are there any questions for Mr. Brauman from the board at this point? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. At this point, I'll open it up for any comments from the public. And first of all, just check, is there anybody online that would like to provide comments on this topic? Okay, very good. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to come forward and provide comments on this topic? All right, I see one person coming down. Thank you. And as always, please sign in and state your name. And be careful with the stairs.
I've been busy doing things I shouldn't, so I'm sore. Hi, Jeannie Rush. I don't want to belabor. You all know what we think. We've sent you tons. I got to pull my drawers up. Sorry. Tons of, data, and I know you don't believe it. I know our elections are selected, they're interfered with in big ways, and we all know it now. I want to ask a couple of questions. One, do we have any alternative bids for the Runbeck contract? You know, are there any other organizations that we went to for printing? Since, you know, when we all came in droves and everybody was upset about the Dominion and the Runbeck, and I assume that's part of why Holly might not be here, and I understand. There's a problem with, you know, Wayne, and is he on this board and that. We know all that too. But do we have alternate bids for printing of ballots besides Runbeck? And how long have we been using the Runbeck when we know they connect to Dominion? Do we have all that information? Because I would like someone to get that for us, since there are many of us still working on legal, you know, battles going on, which is sometimes why Chuck can't talk, and also that we can take to this investigator, which I now have my connection to.
All right, thank you. We'll give Mr. Browerman an opportunity to respond to your questions if he wishes to do so. Do you have anything else at this point?
If he doesn't, will you be able to get that information for us?
I do believe, as far as the contract, it's a matter of public record already. But Mr. Browerman, I think it'll be up to him, but I think he could provide some comments on your questions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to provide comments on this called-up consent calendar item?
Hello again. I'm still Andrew Dalby, candidate for Colorado Springs mayor. As a small business owner here in town, I always try to support other small businesses in town. I know that the commissioners and Mr. Browerman also publicly commit to that. I am also concerned that our printing contract has been sent out of state when there are multiple printers here in town. Myself, I tried to use several different companies in town. One of the ones that I use is Minuteman Press, owned by Ramon Alvarez, who I'm sure you all know of, since he was one of the keynote speakers at the State of the City speech that you were all at. So I asked Mr. Alvarez if he had ever been contacted to submit a bid on ballots. He said no, he had not. He wasn't aware that that was even up for, that was even a contract that was being negotiated, that he had printed ballots in the past, and that he would be appreciative that if in the future he would be considered. I think it's offensive that that the commissioners would say that they support local businesses and not even consider any of the local businesses. Furthermore, we all know that this is, well, this is hardly more than a bribe. And I call on all of you to recuse yourself from this, because none of you are more than a single, have a single degree of separation from recipient of these funds. You four are voting to put money in Holly Williams' bank account. That puts you in an ethical bind, and you cannot ethically vote on this. The fact that that money is being laundered through Runbeck systems and Wayne's supposed expertise as an advisor doesn't change the fact that that's unethical. So I wonder where Wayne gets his expertise. I looked up the UVA law school curriculum, and there is no course on offset printing. And likewise, the BYU political science department does not have any courses on offset printing. I'm not sure where he thinks that he got any expertise. I think his expertise is roughly on par with Hunter Biden's expertise in Ukrainian oil futures or Chinese technology. As Secretary of State, he did choose between rival vendors, and he chose the one that was willing to put him on payroll. That doesn't speak of expertise. It speaks of
Mr. Dalby, if you could just maybe stay on point to the topic, item 5E2.
The topic is that I think that that you need to recuse yourself. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody else in the audience that would like to provide comments on item 5E2? I see you pointing, but Yeah, okay. I see someone coming down, and again, as always, please sign in and state your name. Yeah, you can bring that mic down.
I'm short. My name is Adriana Cuva, and I was an election judge in the primary. And I come to find out that the Agilis machine that all the ballots run through at the clerk and recorders, they are part of Runbeck. So I have a question as to why we are allowing for another $175,000 to be put through and given to Runbeck once again when they were already given $850,000 back in April with no competitive bid. Mr. Brewerman, I believe he's been in that office for 8 years. And I know he said that he needed to run that last bid with Runbeck because we needed to print out ballots for the military. As a military wife, I believe our soldiers do their fair share, as some of you are military spouses, and others have served in the military. Our military is always ready to do their job. So I believe that Mr. Brewerman should have done his job and gotten competitive bids. I wasn't born in this country. I was born in South America, and I'm seeing that I believe that election integrity has we're having a big problem with that right now. And if you haven't lived surrounded by 10 and 12-foot walls around your house so thieves don't get in, that's probably because you have money. Well, in South America, I had to live around 10, 12-foot walls with barbed wire or glass around it, so thieves wouldn't get into your house, okay? Just recently, I met a gentleman from Venezuela, okay? He just got over a month ago. Very nice gentleman. Of course, the borders are open, so why not? Come on in. He said the hardest and scariest part was coming through the Darien Gap. He said, it's going to be very hard to get through what I saw there. Dead bodies and all of it. So if we continue to allow Dominion and Runbeck to run our county, this is what you're going to see here. When my daughter went to South America with me, we were thankful that we always had a driver with us so she wouldn't be kidnapped, or myself. So this is what you're bringing in if you don't have a competitive bid, first of all, and think about you as commissioners are the only ones that can get rid of Dominion here in El Paso County and do hand count. Otherwise, what was reality to me growing up will be reality to you one day too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, please. Everybody? Yes, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to come down and comment on item 5E2?
Do I need to sign in again?
Yeah, I think you signed in once before.
Okay,
Is that
all right.
correct? Yeah.
So, Stan, like you, I was an Air Force officer. I also started out my career as a contracting officer. So you and I know you were acquisitions, so you probably know something about the federal acquisition regulation and the requirement for competitive bids. So I ask you, county commissioners, is there any federal funding that's going to support this sole source continuation of Runbeck of ballots, or is that just taxpayer funded?
Again, we'll give Mr. Brewerman an opportunity to respond if he wishes to do so afterwards.
No federal funding? Okay. I just want to make sure because there's only unusual and compelling circumstances for continuation of the sole source bid. Notwithstanding that, I believe that the taxpayers deserve a lot better than to have over $1 million of a sole source contract to a company that we know that Wayne Williams has an interest in. We know Holly isn't sitting here. However, I object to that. I object to Dominion software. I object to electronic machines counting when we don't know what the result is. And I'm asking you as commissioners to allow a hand count of the 2022 elections. We have a lot of questions about what happened in the primaries. And as we know from a lot of people who've been involved in this, there's always a 62 incumbent, 42 primary challengers, and it was even less than that this time, notwithstanding the surge of people who went out and knocked on doors to support top-line candidates. So I ask Chuck Borman and commissioners that this not be renewed. It's in excess, and it's fraud, waste, and abuse of taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would actually encourage you to follow the recommendations that Mr. Brauman actually just mentioned maybe about 20 minutes earlier. There, as you mentioned before, there's a website that you can register on, and you can actually look at the, if I understood correctly, actually look at the ballots and do your own count, maybe pick your own precinct, and then compare that to the published voting numbers and do a check yourself. And so before we continue, let me, and I make an offer to Mr. Brauman if he wishes to come up. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this item, this called up consent item 5E2? All right, seeing none, I'll make the offer to Mr. Brauman if you'd like to come up. And I do appreciate, I'm sorry? Oh, let me double check. Is there anybody online at this point? Hello? No, okay, thank you. Mr. Brauman.
Chair, County Commissioners, Runback has been a vendor of El Paso County for approximately 10 years. Our first work with them was on print-on-demand printers. This allows, because we are a hybrid mail ballot state, allows us at our vote centers to be able to customize a specific ballot based on where you live in the county. Under state statute as to how we run elections, any individual can go to any vote center and request to vote. We mail out ballots to citizens 21 days before the election, but they can choose that in-person option. 3 to 5, 6% of people typically vote in person. The other 90-some% will vote on the mail ballot that they are sent to. But under the VSPC model, unlike the polling place, where you had to go to your specific neighborhood polling place, you can go to any specific one. And Runback had a unique solution that allows us to be able to do that. In the past, we would have to have ballot inventory of every precinct, and we'd have to make an educated guess as to how many people might go to that VSPC and vote. So that would cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to print ballots to have every available possible ballot in that location for any voter that may come. Runback has that solution. We have had many vendors over the years that has done print vending, and it takes unique capabilities in order to do all those things. Not everyone can do that. Runback offers those solutions, whereas not only with the ballot on demand printing, but also printing services. They are one of the premier print vendors in the country. We are very particular about how we mail our ballots out and our exacting standards, and Runback has met that at every turn. They offer a solution with respect to signature verification, and it is one of the best products in the country. We audit that equipment daily. So based on our past relationship with them, their past performance in consulting with other clerk and recorders from around the state, talking to vendors at conferences, we made the best decision and best value for our citizens of El Paso County.
Thank you, Mr. Brauman. And you had mentioned earlier an opportunity for citizens that wanted to kind of verify or validate some of the vote tallies. Perhaps if you could repeat that, because one of the comments from one of our citizens here that spoke today talked to that briefly. Maybe if you could just repeat what you mentioned this morning to make sure it's clear, because it is an opportunity for a citizen to actually check the voting in whatever subcategory, or what, I mean, they can do the whole thing if they want, but that's a lot of work, but they can pick a subcategory like a precinct or maybe a school district or something. So if you could repeat that, please.
Sure. In addition to our ballot audit tool, we allow our images to be available on our website for people to download, but that can take a lot of memory and a lot of printing if you was to do that. We have the cast vote record that identifies how each ballot was counted. But we put together a ballot audit tool. We call it our BAT tool, kind of like after Batman, a utility tool that allows you to do many things and allows your citizens to go to epcvotes.com, that's El Paso County Votes.com, click on the 2022 elections, click on results and the results tab, and then you can scroll down and you can click on that function and you'll be able to log in, request a password. Then you can download that application, and in the comfort of your home, you can look at all the ballots that were cast in your precinct, in your House district or Senate district, or you can look at the whole county, or you can look at particular races, and then you can go through one by one and see the image of the ballot, how the machine read it, and then in some cases, ballots are adjudicated. So a machine could not identify a mark that is then sent over to bipartisan election judges that then looks at and reviews that. So you can see what the end result, what the election judge had determined that ambiguous mark. So that is a great feature. We're the first in the state of Colorado to offer that, and there's several other counties that have now added that feature.
Thank you, Mr. Browerman. I appreciate it. Are there any comments or questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Browerman at this point? All right, seeing none. And we did this once before, and I'll just ask Mr. Waters, do we have someone here from contracting that could certify our compliance?
Yeah, I think Ms. Gorman can come and.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yep.
So when we had this conversation earlier in the year, I think it was in April, I did ask our contracting office to come down and certify this Runbeck contract, that it is compliant with all applicable statutes and policies. And I appreciate your coming down here, and I'll look forward to your comments here in a moment. But to some comments that was made a few minutes ago by one of our citizens, yes, I do have a strong background in federal contracting, but this is a state contracting law, and there are some differences. And so it's important, actually, for those that have a familiarity with federal contracting to actually go and take a look and realize that there are some differences in how this is applied. With that in mind, if you might be able to give us a comment about our compliance or lack thereof to state and state statute with regard to the Runbeck contract.
Okay. Tracy Gorman, Contracts and Procurement Manager. We follow the state statute in the elections to the T. We are required to, so we do. Our amendment, the amendment today to the contract is just to add funds based on our policy, based on that to get through the next election period. It's only for the end till the end of the year, and then that amendment is done.
Okay, thank you very much. Once again, are there any questions from any of the commissioners or contracting office? All right. Yes. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Any other comments from our commissioners on a more broader topic, but still with 5E2? Commissioner Geithner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question, because it's very important to me to be transparent, and of course, we have public comment, and people have the right to come up and say what they think, and all those things completely support that First Amendment right. However, I do think sometimes that it's appropriate to correct what can be very egregious accusations. And so this is one of those cases. So there was a comment made that we are somehow in an ethics or legal conflict of interest violation because we sit on the same board as Commissioner Williams. I'm going to say for the record that I do not feel in any way that I am biased, regardless of any relationship that Commissioner Williams' husband might have. But I thought that it would be best for our county attorney to weigh in on whether there is any legal conflict of interest, because I certainly want to be above board here and would like to hear that from our county attorney.
I appreciate that question.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. I do not believe that the members of the board currently sitting on the dais have a conflict of interest based on what we've discussed today. Conflict analysis actually implicates a direct, personal, substantial pecuniary interest to the individual. So I've not heard any evidence of that for any of the 4 of you here today.
Thank you very much, Mr. County Attorney. Any follow-up or further questions? All right, thank you. Any other questions from any of the other commissioners? Or comments? No? Okay. Hearing none and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion regarding 5E2.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Let's just give this one more opportunity if there's any more follow-up at this point. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yeah, and sorry, I thought you were asking about questions before, but no, the only thing I'll highlight here is because of previous discussions, and I guess it was April and today, I do think maybe it was more reasonable to print these locally for the excess amount that's being asked. For our mailed ballots, I believe that is a capability I've been told in the past the county does have, and I do think that that would be more reasonable and prudent to avoid any further concerns on the contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, any other comments or questions? All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with the vote. Commissioner Geithner?
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Nay.
Commissioner Bremer?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes 3-1 with Commissioner Williams absent. Thank you for everybody's testimony today. Appreciate all of the comments. Let us move on to item number 10.
Item number 10 is department and committee reports, non-action items. 10A, 2023 budget hearing number 1, preliminary balanced budget and statutory presentation of the 2023 preliminary balanced budget. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
All right, very good. I do have a request from a commissioner or two to take a quick break, so sorry about bringing you up, but we'll go ahead and get started. We'll take a 5-minute break. That'll also give us an opportunity, I think. Is Commissioner Williams able to join us at this point? So we can get her a text and let her know that we'll be proceeding through the rest of the agenda. let's go ahead and get started now for item number 10. I know the whole team is here.
I think it was already read into the record, right? And then I walked up. Okay, cool. Good morning, Commissioners. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer. I am here today to present to you the 2023 preliminary balanced budget. This is administration's proposal to the county commissioners on what should be in the 2023 budget. This is a culmination of a lot of work that's happened over the last 6 to 9 months in planning and preparing for the 2023 year. I will probably say this several times throughout the next several weeks in this process, but a huge thank you to everybody who has been involved. This has been a lot of work from not only the budget team, who does an amazing job, but also every executive director and every elected official within the county has been involved in this process in creating this document to ensure that we serve our citizens to the best of our ability with the resources that we have. And so I'll go through today the process that we use to create the budget, and then go through the budget itself, the revenues and the expenditures, and then we'll actually look at the document that is available for public inspection for our preliminary balanced budget. So as you're aware, our budget is comprised of 3 portions. It is our restricted funds, what we call our partially restricted funds, and unrestricted funds. Our restricted funds are things that the main or majority revenue source in that fund are completely restricted for that use. There's not a lot of discretion when we're looking at those. And so the restricted funds, where the funds are completely restricted, are the Road and Bridge Escrow Fund. That is the share back of our Road and Bridge mill levy to the municipalities. Our Conservation Trust Fund, which is the GOCO lottery funds that are restricted for certain uses within our park system. The Household Hazardous Waste Fund, which is our enterprise fund. And Schools Trust Fund, which is plat fees collected on behalf of specific school districts within our region, and our Local Improvement District, which is the Falcon Vista LID, which was a LID created with a special fee on certain homes in the Falcon Vista area, approved by the residents of that area to create improvements there. So those 5 restricted funds, the budgets for those have been completed, and there's no discretion within those, and so basically they're in the budget document and they are what they are. Then we move on for partially restricted funds, and what these are funds where either there's a dual source of revenue where some of it's restricted, some of it is, and that has to be supplemented with unrestricted funding, or there's a requirement legally to fund something. So in the Community Investment Fund, that is primarily funded through a sales tax allocation, and those are our annual lease obligations for COPs and the capital lease that we have outstanding. In 2023, we have the final payment on our last capital lease, which we issued for heavy fleet equipment, and we have outstanding COPs, which we continue to fund. And COPs are certificates of participation that are on several of our buildings as a mechanism to be able to finance those. The next fund that we budget for is the Self-Insurance Fund. This is a fund that's split in 2 portions, the health and the risk side. The risk side, we are seeing increases there based on increased premiums and workers' compensation claims. Those have been budgeted for. We had a minor increase in health insurance premiums. We saw about a 4.3% increase in medical costs for our projection. Those are being covered by the employer, not passed to employees this year. This is all based on the Health Plan Trust Board, which is in place. It's a group of elected officials and department directors, which create the Health Plan Trust Board. And we incorporate the changes voted on in those meetings to the budget. And so all of that has been covered within the budget that is in front of you today. We also have to work with actuaries to ensure that we are covering what we call the IBNR, or incurred but not reported claims. And those are claims that happen in a certain year, but then we might not find out for another year or 2 while insurance companies work on passing through claims. So that has all been completed. The next fund that we work on is the Department of Human Services, and there we have to ensure that we can fund our statutory match for state fiscal years 2022-2023, and then our estimates for 2023-2024 allocations as the state runs on a different year than us. And so when the state gives allocations to the Department of Human Services, There's many times a match that comes with that. It might be a 90-10 grant, so we have to find 10% of it. It might be an 80-20 grant. We also look at how much state funding is coming through that and how much will go towards our Tabor cap when they increase those allocations or change any of those allocations. So all of that has been completed. It is in the document that's in front of you. The Road and Bridge Fund, that's where we have a little more discretion. There are restricted funds that come into that, such as the highway user tax, as well as the road and bridge funds collected at the clerk and recorder's office. But in addition to that, the county makes a significant investment with discretionary funding into the Road and Bridge Fund. We allocate the entirety of our specific ownership tax, which is an unrestricted source, as well as a significant amount of our unrestricted sales tax to our Road and Bridge Fund to make improvements on road infrastructure. This year, we are proposing adding $10 million to their base budget as one-time funds to address critical infrastructure. So after those partially restricted funds and then the restricted funds are completed, we move on to the unrestricted general fund. And as you're aware, our two main revenue sources within the general fund are sales and use tax. We have a 1% unrestricted sales and use tax, and then our property taxes. So the sales tax takes a lot more finesse to project. Currently, through July of 2022, which is the most current information that we have as a county, we are up 6.08% over 2021 year to date. We budgeted for a 4% increase. So as we keep reporting to you month over month, we're above budget. But again, a lot of that is over our Tabor cap. We are projecting a 4% increase for 2023 over 2022 numbers, again, in the budget that's in front of you. A normal year, we can see anywhere from 3 to 6%. As you're all aware that there's been nothing kind of normal about the last several years. And so we're monitoring that very closely. To create these estimates, we work closely with local economists as well as with the state legislative economist and look at numbers for the state. These numbers are in line with what other jurisdictions are projecting and what the state is projecting for our area. So when we look at the average increase over the last 5 years, it's 9.35%. But we had a couple of years in there where there was unprecedented spending. We had a lot of federal revenue flowing through our economy. We also implemented in there the Third-Party Marketplace Facilitator Act. And so with all of that combined, 9% is a number that I think is outside the realm of reality. And we're recommending a 4% increase in the budget. And so the overall 1% preliminary sales and use tax budget we have set at $172.8 million, and that's the 1% tax. The public safety tax we estimate will increase $3.6 million over 2022 levels to $39 million annually. So this is a chart where you can see the trend of our sales tax and the budget for 2023. And the next revenue source we go through is the property taxes. So there were a lot of changes to property taxes this year with the implementation of a bill through the Colorado legislature to reduce the assessment rate. And that assessment rate lowered how they assess residential property to 6.95% of the market value. That decreased our overall collections, our ability to have overall collections, but because the growth in property was so large, we're able to recapture some of our temporary mill levy reduction, our property tax will increase 8.4% to $74.6 million. This is all based on the 2022 valuations from the certification, the preliminary certification from the assessor's office. This will change by the time we get new certifications in November, but we don't anticipate that much of a change. We will still be issuing a temporary mill levy reduction.
Just a moment, we have a question.
Thank you. Our assessor only evaluates in odd years, is that right?
We reassess in odd years, but continually we're looking at new growth, construction, appeals, as well as deconstruction. So we get new certifications every August and November of every year, but there's not a lot of change in even years. And so the change from this
Sure.
year to last year was not very large. We anticipate a large change going into next year because that will capture the last 2 years of property valuation growth. And that is where we saw a lot of growth in our housing market.
Okay, thank you.
And so the change this year, actually our total valuation went down this year because of the reduction in property tax assessment rate. Because all we recapture in this year is construction and new growth.
Thank you.
So for 2023's property tax bills, we are still going to be implementing a temporary mill levy reduction of 0.384 mils, which we do the property tax Tabor cap as well as the 5.5% mill levy law. And so, and I'll go through that in the next slide a little bit, but that is estimated at $13.34 on a $500,000 home. Without that reduction, our total mill levy would be 8.46, but we're issuing an 8.077 mill levy in the preliminary budget. And then in addition to that, this budget looks at issuing a temporary or a one-time credit for the Tabor overage collected in 2021. That was $30.7 million. And so that would be estimated $113 on a $500,000 home. And so the average home in El Paso County would receive $113 back. This is something just for full transparency, we're still looking at. There's a couple other ways we're looking at refunding that. And so at this point, it's in this budget as a property tax credit. And then we'll continue to evaluate those options before we issue the final adopted budget in December. And so in this budget, the net property tax income is $45.1 million. So there was a total of $116 refunded through the 2 Tabor reductions through property taxes per $500,000 home. This is a little chart to show how this taxes are allocated within the county. There's a common misperception that the county collects your property taxes, and so put a little graphic together to show a $500,000 home based on the 6.95% assessment rate would get about $2,077 of property taxes collected through our county treasurer annually, based on current mill levies. And of that, 74% of that would go to the school district that this home was located in. I think we used a District 11 home. We actually pulled this directly off of the treasurer's site and used actual numbers on a $500,000 home. So 74% goes to the school district, then 11.9% ends up at the county, and then the city of Colorado Springs would receive 6.57% of that, and smaller and smaller. So you can see the primary portion of property taxes goes to the school districts locally. And so the county would receive about 12.2% in total because we receive 0.28% road and bridge share, as well as 11.9% for a general fund share.
I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I have a comment on this because I think this is a very good way of doing this graph. So frequently, and sometimes the taxpayers will get offended at me if I do this, so I apologize to anyone who I haven't handled this diplomatically with. I had someone call me a week and a half ago upset about a paving project we were doing and about how much we've paid to El Paso County over the years. His home is in Glen Eagle, an unincorporated area of the county. He pays $3,200 in taxes on his home. He has school district tax, which is District 20, which is fairly high. I know it's at least 40 mill levies. 40 mills, 4 mills, 40 mills. And then, the usual, the library district. But in there too, he has Denala Water District, which since they converted to getting some water from the city of Colorado Springs, their mill levy went up. And so by the time we were done, out of that $3,200, his El Paso County tax bill was $300. And so that dollar bill was even shorter here. So I love the way that you have done this. So thank you very much for that change. I think it really does express to the taxpayer what great value they are getting out of our government.
Thank you for your comment, Commissioner. So as I mentioned earlier, growth in property tax is constrained by the 5.5% mill levy law, as well as Tabor. We talk about Tabor a lot. Tabor constricts our overall revenue for the county, but there also is a calculation just on property tax growth, as well as what's called the 5.5% mill levy law. And we have to go by whichever is more restrictive in each year. This year, actually, the 5.5% mill levy law was more restrictive than Tabor, based on the high CPI increase expected for the year. What this does is it allows for property valuation growth to be higher than the growth in property tax. And so any jurisdiction that is constrained by these, which all jurisdictions are constrained by the 5.5% law, what it does is even if property taxes are growing by, say, 20% a year, some huge number, and we've actually seen things like that recently, doesn't mean your property tax bills are going to grow by that same percentage. We cannot absorb that kind of growth in any one year, and it spreads it out over several years to ensure that our citizens don't get hit with a very large increase in 1 year to property taxes. So as you can see, this chart, and really if you look here, this 2012-13, 14-15 is the effect of this Great Recession. As property valuations are done 2 years in arrears, this chart normally, if we would have normal growth, you would have seen going up along this line. But because of the Great Recession, we dipped and we're recovering from it finally out here in 2020, 21, and 22, and into the 2023 budget. We always look at how we compare to other counties across the Front Range and all the largest 10 counties in Colorado. We don't include Denver on this. They're a little bit different. They're a city county. So we talk with the other 10 counties and do a comparison of our taxes. Our property tax per citizen is at about $92 per citizen. That is significantly lower than the next closest county, which is Mesa County. But I'll be honest, this doesn't tell the whole story because some counties also have a sales tax such as us, and some counties are primarily funded by sales tax. And so what we do is we look at local tax cost per citizen as an overall measure, and this includes sales taxes, specific ownership taxes, and highway user taxes, as well as obviously property taxes. And so we still are the lowest tax cost per citizen county. I think this is a point of pride for our staff as well as our elected officials. We like to say that we do more with less. We run the most populous county in Colorado on the lowest tax per citizen of any large county.
If you could go back one, and I think Commissioner Gonzalez has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, one more, sorry. You were finishing that one up. Yeah, so this includes what would still be the Tabor refunds in there or not? Excesses?
This would include a Tabor credit. Tabor, a temporary mill levy reduction. So if we weren't able to issue the entire mill levy.
This is property tax.
This is
Maybe I'm
property
looking at a
taxes.
different slide. Oh, okay. When we get to the total, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. We made a couple changes to the revenue budgets based on talking with departments and their projections for next year. The two significant changes are for the clerk and recorder, increasing their revenue budget by $650,000. They feel like their revenue budget was a little bit low, and they're seeing more activity in their office. Planning and community development fees, we're decreasing by $395,000 from the 2022 to 2023 revenue budgets. That's a projection from our planning director based on the anticipation of lower construction volume in 2023 due to economic conditions. And those have been incorporated into the budget. So when we move forward and we start working on the expenditure budgets, we start with the philosophy that we retain our base expenditure budgets from 2022. So essentially that's their 2022 adopted budget, less any one-time things that were put into their budget, because obviously those were only one time. And then we calculate what we call the beginning operational savings, which is essentially the spendable fund balance. And that is created through a number of ways. It's additional revenue that was collected above our budget that didn't need to be returned in a TABOR refund. As you're aware, over the last year, we have been utilizing some restricted grants in places that we usually would use general fund dollars, and so we've been able to create savings there, as well as some underspending from departments. So all of that gets combined into what we call our beginning operational savings, which is $14.7 million of one-time available funds. And then with all of that, we have our revenue projections, we have our base budgets, and a beginning operational savings of $14.7 million. And then we start there and we work with the departments and offices to collect critical need requests. And those were all turned in from each department saying what their needs were for the budget. And we start the strategy phase of the budget where we have meetings with the countywide elected officials and department executive directors. And in those meetings, we go through and talk to all of the needs from all the departments and kind of go through each one. And it really helps us build a consensus between those leaders within the county of what the direction should be with the budget. We really incorporate our strategic plan into that and ensure everything that we're talking about fits within the county's 4 main strategic objectives. We evaluate the increased service demands, population growth, and any mandated pressures that we have. For the 2023 budget, we are recommending a 5% increase for our cost of living adjustment for our employees, as well as a 2% allocation of personnel budgets for departments and offices for equity adjustments. Additional would be reserved for market adjustments to be allocated based on the comprehensive salary study that we've done. We are continuing to look at that. We've made adjustments this year on that, but there's still a little bit of work to do to get our employees closer to market. You'll hear in the critical need presentations from our Chief Human Resources Officer on the areas that are most in need. Our CPI is currently projected to be 8.2% for 2022. And so that's a number we're trying to keep our employees closer to their cost of living. And so we feel it's appropriate to recommend a 5% cost of living adjustment to them. County road budgets. This is a huge priority in the 2023 budget. We are recommending adding $10 million of one-time funds for road projects, which would allow the Department of Public Works to strategically address the highest priority road projects. And you'll hear from our Public Works office during their critical need presentations about their plan to best utilize that funding. I'll sneak peek into that. I know that they're trying to utilize some of it to draw down more funds from the federal government and use it as a match to greater grants that we would be able to capitalize on this funding. And so here's a chart showing our additional investment in roads, and it really shows the county's commitment to investing in our local roads since 2016. This is budget above and beyond what that budget was in 2016. And so if you look, $23.1 million more than we were investing 6 years ago is a huge amount of money to address our roads. We also look at our TABOR calculations to ensure that the budget that we're presenting is within our TABOR forecast. And so for 2022, we are significantly over our TABOR cap, as I keep presenting to the board on a monthly basis. We are estimating for 2022, we will be over by about $30 million at this point. I say that because that can change very drastically. We obviously don't have a final CPI. That will change several times before they give us final numbers in February and March next year. Our growth calculation, we are using a preliminary number that came in at 2.09% for 2022. That number does change when we get our final growth calculation in, we'll get that late November, usually the week of Thanksgiving, for the 2022 certification. And that number, there's kind of no rhyme or reason. It goes up and it goes down. I haven't found a trend in that, and so it's hard to predict. Sales tax and intergovernmental impacts have been increasing. So we're continuing to monitor that very closely, and we'll continue to report to you on a monthly basis on where we're at with that. But that has been budgeted in here for the 2023 budget. We also are looking at the reserves for the county. We want to ensure that our county is financially stable, not only through an emergency, but also through an economic downturn. And so we have looked at this budget and ensured that the impacts that we're recommending to you are sustainable through any sort of economic downturn. We have projected an economic downturn, let me say this appropriately. We have done a projection that if there was a kind of an economic downturn like we saw in the Great Recession, which was an 8% decrease in sales tax, if we saw that beginning sometime in 2023 or 2024, that the effects of what we're recommending here, the ongoing impacts, would be sustainable through that, and they would. We would be able to absorb that with the reserves and also ongoing revenues that we have to ensure that we would make it through any kind of recession like that. Hopefully that doesn't happen, and we're well set up, but we are being fiscally conservative with this budget. With that, we would like to recommend adding $3 million to our emergency reserve through this budget. And so you'll see that as a separate line when we get to the funded critical needs. And that would be above and beyond what we require for our fund balance policy. Those are not our only reserves. We hold a minimum fund balance reserve. We also hold a taper reserve of 3%. And so overall, our reserves sit at about 18.5% of our general fund. That is well within the best practices recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association of 16.67%, or essentially 2 months worth of revenues in reserves. And so we're in a good place with our reserves and feel confident with this budget. As I mentioned earlier,
just a moment, Commissioner Gonzalez has a question or comment.
I did want to highlight again, this is one of the things I'm very proud of this board has been able to do. When Commissioner Vandenwerf and I first joined the board, we were at $0, I think, for the emergency reserve. And that was not the fault of the previous board. You had the Waldo Canyon and Black Forest fires that happened. But the fact we've been able to get this to a place where when we have tight budgets, to put us in a position that if something happens, a downturn the next year or two, which some people are expecting, we've put the county in a strong place to be able to absorb that. So I compliment everybody that's been working on this and the staff and the foresight over the last several years, because a lot of people don't plan out 2, 3, 5, 6, 8 years. And I think you guys have done a great job of doing this over 6 years almost. So thank you.
I appreciate those comments, and I would echo them. I think this gives an easily accessible emergency reserve that if there is an emergency or any other sort of economic downturn, that provides that peace of mind that we have the funding available to access. As I mentioned earlier, our strategic plan for the county has 4 main objectives, and we ensured when we were going through this process that everything that we're funding as a critical need in the process to add to base budgets directly identifies with one of these 4 areas. So we're looking at the infrastructure being a priority of the county, which is looking at the roadway, stormwater facility, fleet, and park assets, and we're assessing them and also improving them. Service quality, improving the quality of the county services with a qualified and engaged workforce dedicated to continuous improvement, increasing community trust, and participating in partnerships to support public health and safety efforts to improve the health and safety of our residents. And so, excuse me, I'm going to go through these are all of the critical needs addressed in the 2023 preliminary balanced budget. This is specific to the general fund unrestricted side, except for the roads. Obviously, we'll send that money over to roads as an allocation of sales tax to fund those items. So for the Board of County Commissioners, we have 2 commissioners who would start new terms in January, and they come with a statutory pay increase, and that's what that first line is. The second line is an investment into our county's ERP system to allow us to upgrade that. It's part of a multi-year strategy, which we presented last year to obviously our largest computer system to increase that for a replacement for ERP as enterprise resource planning software and human capital management and time tracking software. The next line, $3 million to county reserves, as we just spoke to. Then for pay adjustments, $16.4 million for that 5% cost of living adjustment and 2% equity and comp study adjustments. That is for all funds across the county, including human services, road and bridge, public safety. It's encompassing of the entire county. And then the last countywide statutory pay increase for countywide elected officials. And so all of our countywide elected officials, with one exception of the DA, is up for re-election this year. And so with those new elected officials starting in January, that is the statutory pay increase for them, including all taxes and retirement. So for departments and offices, our assessor's office is requesting $50,000 annually for operating increases as printing and mailing costs have gone up. Our clerk and recorder's office is requesting $227,000 for a post-election audit system. Our community services department is requesting $160,000 to maintain El Paso County parks in the eastern side of the county. And our district attorney's office is requesting $210,000 for what they're calling an unfunded mandate for the 48-hour arraignment. This is where there's a law that requires if you're arrested, you get arraigned within 48 hours. So if you were arrested on a Friday night, you have to see a judge and a DA by Sunday. And so this is the staffing to be able to do that. It's actually overtime and increased salaries, but no new FTEs. They also are requesting $60,000 ongoing for a wellness program, which would bring them to the level where our sheriff's office and our coroner has for a mental health wellness program within their office. The next line, $10 million for additional investment in roads, as we've spoken about. And then the next line is directly on roads as well. It's 3 FTEs for maintenance workers on our blades, as well as motor graders of $1.8 million. And that's to increase our effort onto gravel roads in rural El Paso County. And as you'll note, that's the first time I've talked about FTEs in this budget, and I'll go through later when we get to the document. But this budget is not very heavy on adding FTEs to our county budget. We've looked heavily at ensuring things are done through contracts and not growing government. This year, this whole budget actually has a negative FTE count where we've reduced a few FTEs in certain departments. I mean, we've already done that. And then we're adding 11 FTEs through the entire budget process. So the overall authorized FTE count actually goes down from 2022 to 2023. The next line in Public Works is Acres Pond construction. There's a pond on the Acres site that Department of Public Works would like to address for stormwater quality at $1.5 million. We also are adding 2 FTEs to Public Works to specifically address stormwater maintenance and do proactive maintenance throughout the county on our stormwater facilities. And as we're all aware, fuel costs are significantly higher than they have been over the last several years, and we are requesting $400,000 annually to go to our Public Works Road and Bridge budget to address rising fuel costs. In our Digital Strategy and Technology Department, or IT, increased subscription costs for Microsoft 365, which is the primary platform that we run on, of $111,000 annually for the entire county, as well as $1.8 million for IT operational support. And then our Facilities and Infrastructure Management Department has 4 requests. The first is $1 million to address the elevators at the Citizen Service Center. Our Facilities Department is on a multi-year plan of ensuring that we're addressing elevators on an ongoing basis. As we all know, elevators can be an issue and are fairly pricey, so we're doing that on a multi-year plan. We also are planning to do an infrastructure assessment. If you go back a few slides, we were talking about our first strategic goal is to assess the quality of our infrastructure across all 5 areas. That's specifically what this amount, this $250,000 of one-time funding would do, is help us assess that and get in a strategic plan to ensure that we're addressing our infrastructure appropriately. We also are seeing increased custodial costs across the entire county. So we're asking for a $350,000 ongoing increase to custodial costs, as well as a one-time allocation of $180,000 for a courthouse facility optimization study, as we are aware that we need to look at the courthouse and how the space is being used and what space is needed there. Our Human Resources Department has 4 requests. So a total of 3 FTEs. One is a senior human resources business partner, and 2 talent acquisition specialists, which is a fancy term for a recruiter. As we're aware that in this environment, in this HR environment, finding employees and quality employees is hard. And so we're in need of a couple of recruiters. And then ongoing amounts of totaling $77,000 for some electronic softwares to help assist with efficiencies within HR. The next FTE that's being requested in this budget is an appeals specialist within our Veterans Services Administration. And that is to allow for faster response times to help our local veterans navigate the national VA process. And so we're requesting $84,000 for that. We also are requesting just shy of $19,000 for Emergency Management Accreditation Program, temporary position in emergency management. And obviously that's a joint project with the City of Colorado Springs through the Pikes Peak Regional OEM. And that is just the county's share of that. And it's the second part of a 2-year plan. And then our final requests for critical needs is through planning and community development. We're requesting 2 planners at a total cost of $244,000 to reduce our wait times in plan review, as well as $150,000 for contract cleanup of homeless camps. And that is through an IGA that we signed into a couple months ago with the City of Colorado Springs for us to address homeless camp cleanups that are within the county and not within city limits. And so those are all of the needs that we are looking at. And I'm quickly just going to go through this slide, and I'll go back to the spread or go back to the document and kind of go through that and talk to how that works. Today is the first budget hearing, and I appreciate everybody, if anyone's listening in, and the commissioners today. Budget hearing number 2 will be on October 18th, and October 20th is budget hearing 3. And those are critical need presentations. That's when you'll hear from each department and office specific to the needs that you saw on the screen today. And they also may talk to anything that wasn't funded. And on those dates, we'll give you a presentation of anything that was requested that didn't make it into the budget and why. And then on November 15th, that is our final direction hearing. That's where the Board of County Commissioners will kind of give me head nods, and I'll look for 3 head nods to any changes from the preliminary balanced budget to the final budget. And that's the day, that's kind of my favorite day. We get to play with the spreadsheet in public session, and I have to do math in public. And then the budget between November 15th and December 6th, our amazing budget staff basically takes their time to prepare all the budgets, do the final mill levy certification, and get all that stuff into a pretty document for you for the December 6th hearing, in which we will adopt the final budget based on the direction from the November 15th hearing. At all of these hearings, we welcome and invite public comment.
Just a moment. Did you have a question?
She's about to highlight this. Very important. I tell every constituent all the time that budget hearing number 4, although the responses should continue throughout, that's the one we make those last final adjustments on like a spreadsheet to the public. Please come out on the 15th if you have requests, because that's when we're physically, or I guess on a computer, making changes. But please provide feedback during all this. And I know you're about to say that. So.
Absolutely. I'll echo what Commissioner Gonzalez just said. Throughout the whole process, would love to hear feedback if any constituents would like to reach out. You can email the budget office. You can call me directly. Our budget manager, Lori Clayton, is available. Obviously, any commissioner. Welcome the public feedback. We also have the document I'm about to show you, as well as this presentation, are already online this morning. And so if you go to the county's budget website, you'll be able to see that. I know we're issuing a press release later today to ensure that this gets into the media, to welcome that comment. And we have paper copies upstairs in the commissioner's office if anybody wants to come by for public inspection. So this document is available for public inspection starting now. I got texts about an hour ago that everything was uploaded, and so it's all up there. But absolutely welcome that public comment. But the time that the budget changes, if there is going to be a change to the budget, is in that November 15th hearing. So
Great, thank you.
So just give me a few minutes and we'll just quickly go through the actual budget itself.
There is more. Actually, if I might, I've got just a few comments on, well, let me just ask the commissioners if they have any comments on the first set of charts before we go into the second set. Commissioner Williams.
Well, first, it was very well done. Thank you. Just one of my, I guess, least favorite comments I've been making lately to the public is our ability to apply for statewide grants. So, for example, if we were to look at applying for a Safe Streets to School grant to get a bridge, pedestrian bridge over a major road in Monument area, we would have to essentially, because our Tabor taxes are counted at both levels, the county and the state, we essentially wouldn't be able to apply for it, because then we would have to, now it's for a very good purpose, our favorite purpose, transportation. We would not, we'd have to look at not applying for it because those revenues are counted twice in the Tabor calculation. I've been explaining that to several constituents recently, saying I truly do believe that every commissioner in a county that's a major county in the Denver metro area that has eliminated the Tabor spending cap, which I wouldn't advocate for eliminating it, just perhaps modifying it in some way. The Tabor revenue limitation cap, every commissioner in a major county in the Denver area, probably from Adams to Boulder to Denver, as well as a few others, are very well aware of the fact that El Paso County can no longer apply for these grants. It essentially, what it is El Paso County paying for Denver area issues. And that's very frustrating to me. And so I wanted to comment just on that. You don't have to expound on it, but I have been, unfortunately, really explaining that to a lot of taxpayers recently about that, because it seems to be the trend of the state government to take a lot of their revenues and place them into grant form for us to apply for. And so while we can apply at will for federal grants, because those do not count against our Tabor revenue caps, the state grants do. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other comments or questions before we move on to the second charts? I've got a few, but I'll reserve those. All right, seeing none. On the, we don't have to go back to the chart, but on the property tax per citizen, the 10-county comparison, it's page 13, where we're showing $92. And that's obviously the total property tax revenue divided by the number of citizens. But it dawns on me that I don't know how great a comparison that really is, because some counties might have more apartments where people are not paying, a property tax or something. So there's going to be discrepancies between the counties. So what I wanted to do is just maybe ask if maybe a similar chart could be provided, or just some information sent to me. What's the mill levy for each of those counties, which maybe is an easier way to see what everybody's tax rate is.
I'd be more than happy to get a presentation or a chart put together for this board for the mill levy for those top 10 counties. Absolutely.
Okay.
This, like it said, that chart is per citizen. And so it takes all the property taxes everybody pays and divides it out by the citizen. I also, I think I did say earlier, it's not the best showing of our total revenue, as we have a sales tax and some of those other counties do not. And that's why that next chart of total local tax per citizen, I think is a little more applicable.
Right. Thank you. And then for as far as the county road projects, getting that 10 million, adding that 10 million as a one-time, I'm just, it's always dependent on what everything looks like at the end. So I'll reserve full support for it at that point, but I just want to mention I like it. I think that is a good thing to do. And again, it just depends on, once we get to the end. And then the other one, to Commissioner Gonzalez's point, we have worked over several years here getting more emergency reserve funds in place. And it actually, in addition to, getting that to 5 million, we actually did tap into it one time for the garage. And that became, an indicator of the value of it. We could run into other situations like that, or if we have an economic downturn and we need to figure out how to survive, that reserve is good. So again, depends on where we are at the end as far as what we have, but notwithstanding that question, I am liking this $3 million addition as well. So I just wanted to bring up those points. Yes, Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since you brought up the charts per citizen, I actually did have a question about that as well. So you talked about, the different sales tax, different things that we have in addition to that, which I appreciate. One of the things that I'm not sure is the same everywhere and would also be interested in is taking a look at how we utilize PPRTA dollars. So maybe there are counties that do not have a rural transportation district, and so they are paying for all of their roads and that type of thing from other areas. I know it's always very difficult to compare all of those items, but PPRTA and how that affects those numbers would also be of interest to me if it's possible to weave that in as well.
Absolutely willing to look through that. I think that is a larger project than the thing Commissioner Vanderwerf asked for. I think that first one, I think we could have today. I think that would be several weeks of work for a budget analyst, just because I do know there's a lot, I hear, there's law enforcement districts. And so I know several counties have a law enforcement district that's not in their county budget, but it pays for a lot of their law enforcement. We have Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority. Several jurisdictions have transportation authorities, and so we'd have to do a lot of research on what that is and reach out to other counties, but more than willing to do that and get that together for you.
Sure, obviously not the budget is fantastic, but just kind of a curiosity of how that, really trying to get those comparisons down and understanding where we're at. And also, is the public safety sales tax specifically included?
Yes, all of our taxes are included in here. So it's all of our 1.23% sales tax, as well as property taxes, specific ownership tax, and highway user taxes that we receive.
Okay,
are in here.
perfect. So yeah, but that would be just of an interest. And I think I mentioned this previously as Commissioner Williams made comments about state grants. I certainly am also concerned about the state taking, money from El Paso County residents and then redistributing it to the Denver metro area. I don't know if there is a way for us to come up with some sort of at least rough estimate around the amount of income tax that our residents are paying, amount of taxes that they're paying into the state, and trying to say how much of that is actually coming back to our citizens versus how much of it might be going somewhere else. That's kind of another long-term related to that issue of, are we getting that money back for the state, or is the state using El Paso as this place to come and gather taxes and not getting it back? I certainly wish that they would just spend the money on transportation in the state of Colorado, rather than doling out all of these grants and trying to rearrange money. I wish they would just allocate the money from our state budget in a way that makes sense to pay for core services that we all expect, instead of raising money with the transportation plan that they came up with and creating all these fees. And I know everyone's really excited about that 27-cent fee. It would have been great if they had taken that money and put it into our roads instead. But nonetheless, I know that is a much bigger kind of picture. But I think as we're moving forward, and like I said, this budget, everything you presented looks fantastic. But as we look forward to the future of the county, I think those would be really helpful for me to just really do some comparisons to where we are in the state. Thank you.
Absolutely. Willing to work on that. Thank you.
Yes,
Based on that,
Commissioner Williams, go ahead.
I have two comments. Maybe the state could actually reduce our income tax rate so we're not overpaying to the state. But in addition to that, on the RTA, I'm actually quite fascinated. I think there's only one other RTA in the state, but I can certainly help facilitate that research. I think it's San Luis Valley has an RTA. I do always mention that in Douglas County, they do pave their streets with a little bit of gold. They have 4 mills dedicated all the time to roads out of their 14 mills. And when it came to reducing their 2% sales tax, which was a justice and public safety sales tax designed specifically to build their justice and public safety building, they changed it over to dedicating a certain percentage of that to roads. I do not know which percent that was. But those would be interesting things to follow up on too, whereas we've had to make some tough decisions. Former county commissioner boards made some tough decisions when it came to roads about how many mill levies to dedicate to roads in El Paso County, because anything we dedicate, we have to share back with our municipalities, including the big one that takes up most of the county. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments. I've got one more question, but again, I'll reserve it in case anybody else has anything. All right, seeing none. It's on page 23, and what prompted me to think of it is the arraignment mandate item, 210,000. And, you know, I just, now I'm kind of curious how much, we might be in a place where we can assess financial impact to the county in an aggregate level with regard to the many unfunded mandates that have come down our way. I know in some of those cases, we were able to mitigate it to one degree or another by introducing amendments, and therefore the costs were less than originally proposed. But I know we've got some of that in our clerk and recorder's office. We have this particular item identified here, and it would be interesting to know, you know, maybe in the aggregate what that might look like for whatever it's worth. And perhaps this is a little bit tongue in cheek, but just I might want to send them the bill. And of course, I know we won't get anything out of it, but it's just to make a point. And but I am interested, I think, in knowing what unfunded mandates are doing to our budget at the aggregate level. I don't know if that's easy to find or not, but I'll just make that request.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we've absolutely been tracking that. You know, we can do some more analysis into that. We receive unfunded mandates all of the time. And obviously in this county with our Tabor cap, we are concerned about funded mandates, but at least we appreciate the attempt to fund it. But when unfunded mandates come through, it's even harder to absorb within the budget.
Great, thank you. Those are all of my questions for the first charts. And I don't think I see anything from anybody else, so let's go ahead and proceed into the second set.
Okay, so this is the actual preliminary balanced budget document. This is the document that's open for public inspection on the website, in the commissioner's office in paper form, and also we'll give a copy to anyone who asks for it. I'm just going to quickly go through this. We don't need to go through a page. A lot of this is duplicate information from what was just in the presentation. So you can see the entire revenue sources, $448 million. Most of that is, or a lot of that is a voter restricted sales and use tax for public safety, the road and bridge escrow fund, as well as other restricted sources for $257 million of discretionary revenue sources. For our revenue, the chart, you can see that almost 40% of our revenue comes from sales and use tax for the general fund, as well as an additional, trying to find it, 9% for the restricted sales tax. 10% of our revenue for next year is coming from property tax. But that is only, usually it would be larger than that, but that has to do with the Tabor credit that is currently programmed into the property tax as a refund. Our total expenditures in the budget are $472.6 million. 60% of that is personnel and 40% is operating. That number keeps shrinking in the personnel side and growing a little bit in the operating side year over year. And the reason for that is we are trying to look at where contracting would be more efficient or more effective, and trying to limit the footprint of county government when it's not needed. Our unrestricted general fund totals just shy of $200 million for this year for the unrestricted general fund. Of that, 45% is for public safety. And remember that this is just the unrestricted general fund. On top of that is $39 million from our public safety tax. And so the $89 million that we allocate in the general fund unrestricted plus $39 million for public safety directly. And there's the next chart, we'll go through that in more detail. And then county administration and support services, 23%. But remember, that's not what you just typically think of as administration. And there's another chart for that. The county administration mostly is comprised of IT, which is Digital Strategy and Technology Department, as well as facilities, financial services, human resources, our utilities budget for the entire county, and other smaller departments. The public safety, the $89 million I mentioned earlier, the majority of that, about 66% of that is the sheriff's office. We also include district attorney, coroner, our security office, justice services, and emergency management, hazmat. We've already seen, oh look, Commissioner Vanderwerf. There's a chart. I was like, I know we have the data.
There you go. Somebody had that on file somewhere.
It's in the document.
All right.
Just didn't make it to the presentation. So there's the mill levies for the top 10 counties, top 10 populous counties. And then property tax per citizen, the same chart you saw. Local tax per citizen, this is where you can see the taxes per citizen more in detail. And then the critical needs funded, we've already gone through all of that. This chart I spoke to earlier in the presentation, you can see the adjustments to personnel authorizations. And we've reduced in 2022 from the time of the current FTEs, we made 27 reductions. That was preliminarily due to working with department directors to say, you know, we have a lot of unfilled positions and we are having a really hard time recruiting. And so we were able to reallocate the funding for those positions to other areas, including employee compensation to ensure, you know, recruiting and retaining employees of our current employees was a little more important than recruiting new ones at a lower pay. And so we reduced 27 FTEs across the county. We're adding 11 through this budget for final allocation of 3,005 employees for the county as a whole. So I just want to walk through a little bit of how this budget works. Here's the changes to the revenue budget. So you can see, for example, this top line, the sales and use tax budget overall is increasing by 17.9 million, and here's how it's allocated. Property taxes is decreasing by 17.7 million. That's primarily due to that $30 million TABOR refund. So if you net those out, you can see where that is. Other charges and how all of the revenue budgets are changing across the county. Same thing with the base budget for the expenditure side. And then those first two were budget changes, and then this one is the budget as a whole. So the revenue side, you can see the total sales and use tax budget of 172.8 million, how it's allocated by fund. This is your TABOR refund is coming out of the general fund. And so that's how to use this document. You can see personnel, operating, and capital here. So in general fund, unrestricted, you have a total of $140 million of personnel. That's how to use this page. This is our reserve estimates. So we have an estimated beginning fund balance, and then how we would walk through that emergency reserve and other fund balances. And then this is the revenues by category, and then allocation of expenditures by category. And so you can see personnel, operating, capital, and reimbursements within every budget through the county. And that is the entire document. So if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Again, invite citizen comment. I would love to talk to anybody directly. Obviously, anybody's willing to or able to talk to their commissioners about the proposed budget, but willing to answer any questions that anybody has.
Yes, Commissioner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on roads, so there's a $10 million one-time increase. Is there any ongoing increase this year?
Not in this budget.
Okay, last year there was.
There was 1 million last year, and so that is now in the base budget. So that stays.
Right.
And this, we're recommending 10 million one time, as we're also unsure about a future recession and
Okay.
trying not to give promised money for future.
Sure. And then maybe it'll be in a future budget. Normally you do put out more of a projected a 3 or 4 year, and then sometimes you've included projected increases. So I would be interested if there's already early, depending on what the environment is for growth or recession, whether there's any plans to then next year add an increase ongoing to the roads budget.
Okay.
So I'd like to see that once we get to that slide. Normally it's further along, because sometimes when we start to make changes on that graph we're talking about, it's like, well, then this will change things out. So I'd like to see if there's any early plans on that in the future.
We absolutely can talk through that. That's not a document we were planning to present this year. It's not one we have made. Right now, we really want to focus on the current year. And the current year, obviously, we talked to all of these things that we're proposing are sustainable through the next several years. And if the economy continues to stay good, obviously, we would continue to make those large investments in roads is the plan. But without knowing what that looks like, it's hard to make those promises.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Yes, Commissioner Williams?
So how often do we check the Denver CPI? I know you said we would get the final numbers in February of next year, but I had heard that Colorado inflation is the highest in the nation.
Oh, wow. I hadn't heard that, but that's good to know. They update that quarterly. And so they just announced their last projection at 8.2%, which I think nationwide was 7.9. So it's slightly higher. I didn't know it was the highest in the nation because it wasn't that far apart from what I'd heard, but they announced that quarterly.
Okay.
And so we get it every time they announce it.
Thank you.
I appreciate Commissioner Williams' comments, because I think I've seen something as well somewhere, I don't remember where it was, that inflation in Colorado was double digit, not 8.2, but I don't know if that's valid or not. But I heard it was much higher in Colorado.
I had heard that it was at 15% or 15.2. Since I have a daughter that lives in California, I was shocked to find that it was more expensive to live here.
Yeah.
But I would, recommend that perhaps we do some research on that just in case.
Absolutely. I'll get back with all of you about that.
So the 8.2, that's the CPI for Denver area, because I know we use the Denver area CPI, which still drives me nuts. But that's what that is? That's
Yes.
what the number, okay. What I vaguely recall is this double digit was something about an economist making an actual assessment of what the real inflation was. So CPI has its, value and its detractors, and it doesn't, there's a claim in there that it doesn't necessarily truly reflect Colorado's inflation rates, but that's something to validate, I guess. Yes, Commissioner.
So I just did a quick search here. I think that the number that you're referring to, which I'd also heard as well, might be slightly different. In that, I believe it is the rate from January of 2021 to current. And I believe that is just over 15%.
There you go.
Okay, so that would be like 20 months worth of inflation, not 12.
And I think that might be, it's still a staggering number, certainly. But I think that, maybe it's tapered down just slightly. But it is one of the highest in the nation, if not the highest. But just thought I would throw that out there.
Thank you. We'll just ask you to just check it.
Absolutely. I
Double check.
will get back to all of
Great.
you with that information.
And then my question is on page 12. I think I know the answer, but let me just ask. So we do have some upward and downward adjustments on personnel, and there's one there that's kind of big. I'm presuming that as we go through the budget hearings, we will hear the willingness of those departments to accept those numbers. They're going to talk about those numbers, right?
I actually don't believe you'll hear from the Department of Human Services because they don't have a critical need request, but absolutely. This was something we worked with the department director on, and a change we made internally, as I said, was specific especially in her department, to compensation, that it was, we were saving money for open positions that she just couldn't fill because our pay was too low. And so we had to reduce positions and reallocate that already to compensation. So those adjustments have been already done, but absolutely every department director is on board. We kind of got unanimous consent from elected officials and department directors that that was the direction that they wanted to take within their areas to properly operate.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to hearing that from the directors and the other county electeds as they come up.
Absolutely.
Yes, Commissioner.
And to clarify, those 15 slots, in other words, are not currently filled by people. They are open positions that we have not been able to fill. So this is not a reduction in force per se of actual bodies performing jobs currently. It is really just it's an adjustment of what's happening in reality on paper.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and if I could
Yes,
clarify,
go
Mr. Chair,
ahead.
just to reemphasize that so the message gets out, none of these negative 27 these are all vacant positions. These are not filled positions. So every one of these is a vacant position. So.
Very good, thank you. All right, any other questions on this second set of charts from any of the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. Really more of a comment. I really appreciate the time and attention that's been put into this, and also the direction that we're headed, especially considering that we know we are in uncertain economic times. I am truly grateful to our county administrator and Nikki. I mean, it was a whole team effort, I know, but also it's specifically to our county administrator for taking a look and focus on what our core mission really should be as a county, and making sure that we were doing everything we can to be most effective in those areas, so that as we are dealing with economic uncertainty, we're not spread so thin that we're not doing the most important things that we are charged to do for our citizens. So I'm just really grateful for the work on this. Like I said, I know everyone's a big part of this, and really looking forward to the rest of the hearings, hearing those presentations from everyone, but just really impressed with the process this year.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Great, any other comments on this second set of charts? I think we have a third set still, is that correct?
The third set would be when we're going to recess or adjourn this meeting and then call the PID meetings.
Oh, when we call the PID meetings, we'll discuss those charts.
So you're not done with me yet, sorry.
All right, thank you. I think so. So for the other commissioners, just to let you know, we've had a little bit of a conversation here, but it was somewhat dependent on how quickly we got through these charts about whether to hold the PID meetings after land use, but we do have some time here.
We need about 10 minutes to do those.
Okay.
And that's only because there's an inclusion that Lori Seago is in PID 2.
All right, very good. So let me just see if, just to close out item 10A, are there any last remaining questions from any of the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Gonzalez.
I just want to highlight again, appreciate all the effort to get the $10 million extra to roads. It's something we always get probably the most calls on is our roads and infrastructure. And so I appreciate seeing the extra, the money going to our infrastructure and roads. Thank you.
Great. All right, seeing no other further comments on item 10A, thank you very much for the presentation. Let's continue through the agenda. Item 11.
Item number 11 is the addendum, and there's no addendum today.
Great, and item number 12?
Item number 12, executive session. There is no request for executive session.
All right, seeing no further business for this meeting is adjourned. And we just give us a minute or two here and we'll go ahead and get started on the PID meetings.
We're good.
right, at this point, I'd like to call to order our first Public Improvement District Number 1 meeting today on Tuesday, October 4th. Our first order of business is our call to order, and we have all 5 commissioners present, and we have one item, and that is item number 1.
Item number 1 is the 2023 preliminary balanced budget for El Paso County Public Improvement District Number 1. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. For Public Improvement District Number 1, this is the public improvement district that collects the direct impact fees that are paid at time of permitting, as well as receives the property tax revenues that are transferred from PIDs 2 and PID 3. The total revenue that we're anticipating being transferred is $1.7 million, anticipating $2.4 million of direct road impact fees, which is slightly lower than our projections for 2022, for a total revenue of $4.125 million. For 2023, we anticipate the capital expenditures to be approximately $8 million. We're at a point in this public improvement district where our fee revenue is to the point where we can implement capital projects that are recommended by your fee advisory board. And instead of, in the past, we've only been looking at reimbursements to current developers for projects that they have done within those public improvement districts. Now there's funding, so that committee is going through and prioritizing a list that will come in front of you for approval of those projects. And so we're recommending for next year, $1.5 million being retained to reimburse other entities. As we understand, there is a credit coming forward that would be reimbursable, and then the remainder of $8 million available for capital expenditures. And that is
Great.
all I have for PID 1.
Any other questions for PID number 1?
I have a comment.
Yes, please, Commissioner Williams.
That would probably indicate that we have another 8 million extra for road projects.
Yeah, these would be on road projects in within those public
Yes.
improvement districts, but specifically identified to assist with the development that's happening in those areas.
Thank you.
Great, very good. And I assume for the PIDs, we're following the same budget process, so today is just the first hearing on them.
Today is just the first hearing. These will not be brought up at hearings 2, 3, and 4. Unless there is a request for that, and then we would schedule a separate meeting. So we really would just have this hearing, and then the adoption hearing in December is the plan for those.
Okay, I'm glad I asked the question. So it is a little bit of a different process. All right, so one last time, are there any questions or comments from any of the commissioners? All right, seeing none. All right, hang on just a minute. So seeing no further business on this item, this meeting is adjourned for PID number 1. Let's see, skip PID number 2. Request here to skip PID number 2 for the moment. Now, do we need somebody on staff to be here?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. We do not need Lori Segal for this today. I'm ready to roll on these PIDs.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead then and call to order our Public Improvement District meeting number 2 for today, Tuesday, October 4. First order of business, we have all 5 commissioners present, and we have 4 items here. Let's start with item number 1.
Item number 1 is a resolution approving a petition for inclusion of property within the district, Homestead North at Sterling Ranch, filing number 1, Lori Segal, Senior Assistant County Attorney.
Mr. Chair, if I could interject.
Yes, please.
This is a standard inclusion item similar to those that the board routinely hears for payment of the road impact fee. Can I answer any questions on this matter?
Are there any questions from any members of the board on item number 1? Yes, Commissioner, go ahead.
Just
Bremer.
to confirm that as with any of these petitions for inclusion of property, those are kind of self-selected in by the property owner themselves, correct?
Correct.
All right, very good. Thank you for the question. Any other questions from any of the commissioners? And this item, as well as item number 2 and item number 3, will require a vote. So if there's no further questions on item number 1, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval of item 1.
I will second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Let's go ahead and proceed with a vote. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bremer. And the chair votes aye. That passes 5-0. Let's proceed to item number 2.
Item number 2, resolution approving a petition for inclusion of property within the district, Homestead North at Sterling Ranch, filing 2, Lori Seago, Senior Assistant County Attorney.
Mr. Chair, again, this is Kenny Hodges, County Attorney. This is also a standard voluntary inclusion petition.
All right, very good. Yes, Commissioner, do you have questions?
Just going to move approval of item 2.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Are there any other questions? I can't imagine why, but I'm just asking. And seeing none, let's proceed with a vote. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bremer.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes 5-0 as well. And let's move to item number 3.
Item number 3, request to approve the Public Improvement District number 2, August 16th, 2022 minutes.
And I assume the same applies to item number 3, Mr. County Attorney?
Actually, Mr. Chair,
Oh.
this is approval of minutes.
This is approval of minutes. My apologies. Yeah, please proceed.
I move approval of item number 3.
Second.
All right. I'll let the clerk decide who made that second. And are there any questions on the minutes? All right, hearing none, let's proceed with the vote. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Geithner.
Aye.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Aye.
Commissioner Bremer.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That passes 5-0 as well. And now we are to item number 4.
Item number 4, 2023 preliminary balanced budget for El Paso County Public Improvement District number 2, Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Okay, so for Public Improvement District number 2, this is your 10 mil levy PID to pay the traffic impact fees. Based on the assessor's preliminary certification, we expect property taxes of $1.475 million, a related specific ownership tax of $162,000, and interest next year of $6,500 for a total revenue of $1.644 million. The only expenses from this PID are the transfer of funds to PID 1, which we just approved, and the related tax collection expense based on the mill levy. Are there any questions?
Any questions from any of the commissioners?
I do have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Williams.
Once we include a property in a PID, is that for 30 years, much like our special district policy?
It's actually the PIDs with the property taxes are to sunset after 20 years from inclusion of the first properties.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And I think for record purposes, and just to get it stated on the record, I do not see anybody in the audience in case there was any citizen comment on any of these items. And I just want to make sure do we have anybody online? And we have no one online. So just for the record, we don't have anybody here to ask any questions. All right, are there any questions from any of the commissioners with regard to item number 4 then? Any remaining questions? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, wait a minute, that is not a motion, my apologies. Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. And now let's proceed to PID number 3. Calling this meeting to order for PID number 3 for Tuesday, October 4. We do have all 5 commissioners present. We have one item on the agenda.
Item number 1 is the 2023 preliminary balanced budget for El Paso County Public Improvement District number 3, Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. For PID number 3, this is your 5 mil levy PID where the property owners elect to be in this PID to kind of sort of split the difference and pay part of their fees up front and pay part of them on property taxes. Based on the preliminary assessment evaluation, we anticipate property tax revenues of just over $100,000, a related specific ownership tax of $11,000, and interest of $750 for total revenue of $112,000. And the only expenses from this PID would be payments to PID 1 of $100,000, of which we've already approved, and the related tax collection expense. Are there any questions for me?
Any questions from any of the commissioners? All right, seeing none, I don't think we have any further business on this item. This meeting is now adjourned. Let's move to Pioneer Village Roads Public Improvement District meeting. And I'll open this meeting here on October 4. First order of business, call to order. We have all 5 commissioners present. We have one item on the agenda.
Item number 1 is the 2023 preliminary balanced budget for El Paso County Pioneer Village Roads Public Improvement District. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. For the Pioneer Village PID, this is a property tax that was voted by the residents of the Pioneer Village to make improvements to their private roads. The property taxes are estimated at $49,000 for next year, related specific ownership tax of $5,400 for total revenues of almost $55,000. Those revenues are a little lower than last year. They were affected by the drop in assessment rate. And so for contractual obligations for paving operations next year, we anticipate we'll be able to spend about $56,000 in that district. And that's all I have for this, unless there's any questions.
Are there any questions from any of the commissioners on this item? Seeing none, I don't see any further business for this meeting. This meeting is now adjourned. And let's proceed to the next one. Now I'd like to open our Strathmore Valley Street Lights Public Improvement District meeting for October 4. We have all 5 commissioners present. We have one item on the agenda.
Item number 1, 2023 preliminary balanced budget for El Paso County Strathmore Valley Streetlights Public Improvement District. Nikki Simmons, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. For El Paso County Strathmore Valley Streetlight Public Improvement District, this is the PID to help operate streetlights within that district. It was voter approved by the residents there. The property taxes are estimated to be $38,000, related specific ownership tax of $4,100, and interest of $1,000 for total revenues of $43,000. We budget all of that to be able to use for utilities and maintenance within the district. As you can see, there's a bit of a fund balance growing, and there is talk about how to utilize that fund balance to support that district within the confines of the authorization of these funds for next year. That's all I have.
All right. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners on this one item for this particular meeting, item 1? All right. Hearing none, this meeting is also adjourned. And I believe we are completed for our morning proceedings. We will be returning for our land use meeting today at 1 p.m. Thank you very much.